Hello, everybody. Welcome to Chin Fat. In this episode, this is the third episode so far on screenwriting. I'm going to be covering screenwriting, how to write story structure, and how to write and how to technically format a screenplay as well. In this episode, I'm going to be specifically speaking about screenplay page properties. One recommendation I'm going to make here is if you're serious about screenwriting and you want to get better at screenwriting, I would highly recommend reading a lot of screenplays, a lot of professionally written screenplays. It's going to help you quite a bit with story structure. It'll help you a lot with your technical structure as well, and it'll help you be more professional. So one thing I'm going to recommend here is going to just Google search engine and just type in the name of the screenplay that you're looking for, Raiders of the Lost Ark. This is what I usually do. I usually add screenplay and PDF after the title of the movie. Let's hit return there, and it will bring up probably about a dozen websites that will have the PDF readily available. If there are some of your favorite movies that you're looking for, most of the time, screenplays, after a movie has been released and has gone through the theatrical run, oftentimes, sometimes up to a year afterwards, maybe even a couple of years sometimes, they will finally release the PDF online so people can actually go through and read it. Because now you're not spoiling anything because most people have seen the movie by then. And it's a really nice courtesy to just go online and find a PDF and look through the screenplay. So here's one right here. dailyscript.com is a really good website for uploading screenplays here. Has a lot of them here. But if I go to Raiders of the Lost Ark here, there we go. There's the PDF right there. It took me to a direct link, and I can click the little download key there and download it to my computer, and I own it, and now it is mine and doesn't belong to Lawrence Kasdan anymore or George Lucas because I downloaded it as my personal copy. So, right? No. Anyway. But no, now it's free for you to just sit there and read, and I found that is one of the biggest ways of helping you understand how screenplays are written professionally is by looking at professionals' work. So with that, let's get into screenplay page properties. These are just some of the basics here, and some of these are a little bit of a kind of no-duh moments, like, yeah, well, you probably understand that, but screenplays are written on 8.5 by 11 white paper. Pretty normal. You don't do it on letter, of course. And if you have a screenplay writing software, the software will do most of the work for you, the formatting for you, but you still have to have kind of a basis understanding about how the formatting works here. Page number appears up in the upper right-hand corner. No page number is printed on the first page, only on subsequent pages. Screenwriters are all about eliminating redundancy, and if you put and when you open up a screenplay after the title page, the first page is obviously page 1, so they think it's a bit redundant by putting page 1 on there. So the type style used is the Courier 12 font, and that Courier 12 is used for timing purposes because, as you probably heard, it equals out to about a minute per page. So if you write a screenplay that's 90 pages, that's going to be an hour and a half. If you want to write one that's 120 pages, maybe 110 to 120 pages, that's going to be close to 2 hours long. And as long as you were properly formatting it and you understand kind of the amount of action and description you need to use, then yes, it does equal out to about a minute per page. So with these script elements here, the ones that screenwriters mostly will write are these ones right here, from scene heading on down to extensions. Transitions and shots are oftentimes used when the screenwriters usually don't write the transitions and shot types like close-ups and medium shots and dolly shots. They usually hand the script off to the director, and the director does a write-up on it before the movie is shot when it's in pre-production. And then the director will go through and make their own notes and add like transitions. We'll talk about transitions like cut to, dissolve to. Screenwriters hardly ever write those things, and shots as well. Those are just basically notes of the director and the director of the photography to write them into the script so that it kind of is a reminder for them. But let's go through each one of these. Scene heading. Written in all caps, period after interior, exterior, hyphen between elements of the slug line and time of day. Let's talk about that. Let's show you an example here. This is from the movie Moon, the screenplay for the movie Moon, starring Sam Rockwell. But you see at the top here that this is the interior dot, so int dot rec room hyphen double hyphen here and morning. Some screenwriters prefer a single hyphen, some prefer a double hyphen. Just really depends on your preference. One thing you notice over here is this number 15. This is the 15th scene in the screenplay. This is usually not added by screenwriters either. This is added by the first AD, the first assistant director. Once a movie goes into production, they start numbering the scenes so the scenes can be scheduled and shot. But this is a scene heading here, so it starts off with either interior or exterior, INT or EXT, if it's inside or outside. This is inside of a space station on the moon, so this is interior. Rec room is the location, and then a double hyphen, then the time of day, morning. And then down below is action or description, which we're going to be getting into. The scene heading tells you where it's taking place and when it's taking place. Quick little question here is, when do you create a new scene heading? You create a new scene heading when you have a change in time or a change in location. So let's kind of describe that a little bit here. In my earlier episode, I highly recommended using Writer Duet as a software. It's a great online software. It updates as you write. It's like Google Drive. As you write, it saves dynamically, so there's no need to hit the save key on your keyboard. And if you sign up for a free account, it gives you 3 full screenplays that you have access to. You can create 3 projects in here, 3 different screenplays. And if you pay more, you can get access to unlimited screenplays as well. But let's show you an example of a scene heading here. If we're just talking about me just sitting here in my office here, we might start off with INT. Oops, and that's not a scene heading, so let's make it a scene heading. I'm going to get into, in a subsequent episode, I will get into how to technically format, and I will show you guys how to use Writer Duet. I'll show you what the shortcuts are and show you how to write a screenplay, essentially. So I'm going to write INT, and I'm going to call this Channing's Office. And hyphen, and then you can put day, night, continuous. Later, we'll talk about continuous as well, but night. Hit return, and there's a scene heading. Now, I talked about new scene headings when you change location and when you change time. So first of all, let's talk about location. If I got up and I walked out of this room and I walked into the hallway, and if I'm in a movie, and then if I walked from the hallway into the bathroom, that would be 3 locations. You would have 3 different scene headings: interior, Channing's office, night, and then the next one would be Channing exits the room here. There could be more description there, but I'm just going super, super basic here. But I hit return again. We're going to do a new scene, and then I'm going to say interior, Channing's hallway, hyphen, continuous. What continuous is basically means that this is continuous action where there's no gap in time. Basically, I stand up, I walk out of the room, and then the camera cuts to the shot. Then we cut to the shot inside the hallway, and that is continuous. It's one continuous movement as I walk out of this room, exit the room, into the hallway, and that's continuous. So you can put a daytime, nighttime, but if it's continuous, this means it's still nighttime, but now I'm in the hallway. So now we're going to say Channing makes a beeline towards the bathroom. And now we're going to go into the bathroom. So this is a new location as well. So interior, Channing's bathroom, continuous. And those are scene headings there. Now let's say, oops, I got to learn to spell continuous. Continuous. And then you describe, I wash my hands in the bathroom. Yeah, that's it. That's what I do. So the other time you need a new scene heading is where there's a gap in time. So let's say I'm sitting here at my desk, and I'm typing, and then I fall asleep. My head falls down on my desk, and I fall asleep. And then I wake up 20 minutes later, and I'm still in. So it's interior, Channing's office, night. I fall asleep. I wake up, and if I wake up like a couple hours later, it would be interior, Channing's office, hyphen, night. Or it could be morning, like maybe I slept overnight with my face smashed into the desk or something like that. But that would be 2 different scenes as well. So that one would be interior, Channing's office, night. I fall asleep. Then interior, Channing's office, night again. If it's still night, or if it's if it's morning, I can put morning instead. So, and once again, if you were outside, the scene heading would be EXT, Channing's driveway. Everything's about my place, morning or day or night or whatever you prefer to put there. So the next element here I want to talk about, so that was our scene heading. Now we're talking about action. Action runs from left to right margin with the full width of the text on the page. Text is single space. We'll show you an example of this. Character, the very first time you mention a character in action or direction, when you say action and direction, that is the exact same thing. So action, direction, those words are used synonymously. It's either action or direction. Most people call it action. Text is single space. Let's say character. The very first time you introduce a character, that character's name is going to be in all caps. After that, their name is no longer in all caps. But the very first time you intro a character that they haven't been seen in the movie before, it's all caps. Now, some rules here is action sets the scene. We'll get into more description on this later as we start talking about technically formatting a screenplay. Right now, we're just going through the elements. But action sets the scene, describes the setting, introduces character, and describes action. Action is in real time. It's written in the present. You do not write in past tense in a screenplay. If you're writing in something that took place in the past, you're still watching it. When you watch the movie, you're watching it as if it is happening right before your face at that moment. So everything is written in present tense. So you don't say Channing walked to the door. You say Channing gets up and walks toward the door. Going back to our Moon script here, we move down from the scene heading to description. And notice action or description. Sorry. So action or description. And notice this is a single spaced. There's a space between paragraphs. That's one thing that I noticed that you'll notice in screenplays is they usually use 1 to 3 sentences at the most, and then they move on to a new paragraph. Don't make a huge, big, bulky paragraph. Just 1 to 3 sentences, move on to the next paragraph. It helps with the timing, the a minute per page as well. But here we got a state-of-the-art robot, a Gertie 3000. Notice Gertie 3000 is in all caps. That means this is the first time this character is being introduced. It's a robot, but still a character. Known simply as Gertie in all caps. So let's set up the rule for, we're just going to say Gertie instead of Gertie 3000 is preparing Sam's breakfast. Gertie, now notice Gertie is no longer in caps and will not be for the rest of the entire screenplay. And now if you notice down here, is preparing Sam's breakfast. Sam is not in all caps. This is scene 15, and Sam has been introduced earlier on in the script. So the first time I introduced Sam, his name was in all caps, but not anymore after that, after the first time that he was introduced. Okay, character name. Indented 3.5 inches from the left margin. Character's name is in all caps. It tells us who is speaking, so it's used to show dialogue. It can be a name, John, or a description, Fat Man, or Cop Number 1, or Cop Number 2. So here we have a very simple script with 2 characters, boyfriend and sister. And the boyfriend, notice, is in all caps. That is the character name right there. And this is for dialogue. So notice it's tabbed over to right here. And once again, the screenwriting software will help do this for you. And then we have dialogue. So boyfriend, I gotta go. Sister, will you call me tomorrow? Boyfriend, yeah, sure. Promise? Yeah. So I kind of imagine the boyfriend saying that in a very sexy way, like, yeah. Was that sexy? I hope so. Okay, going back to this. So next is dialogue. Dialogue's indented not as far and 2.5 inches from the left margin. This is whatever the character says, just spoken in dialogue. Thinks, now keep in mind that when we say thinks, that is if the audience is hearing what that character is actually thinking in their mind, and it comes in the flavor of voiceover. So voiceover or off-screen. Difference between a voiceover and off-screen. Voiceover is typically used for phone conversations. If you hear somebody talking on the phone and you hear the voice, if you're in here with me, but we don't cut to the other character that I'm talking to, but you hear the voice kind of bleeding out through the phone, that can be used as a VO or a voiceover. For off-screen, basically, and another thing for voiceovers would be narration. If there's a narrator narrating a scene, that narration will be a VO, which is a voiceover. Off-screen means that there is a character that's not in this room, that's maybe out in the hallway or outside and is yelling and screaming, and we can hear them off-screen speaking. Or even like listening through a door or something like that would be off-screen. If I'm leaning against the door listening and I'm hearing these voices, that would be off-screen because they're not in the room with me. So that would be considered off-screen. So here is the example of dialogue. We already showed this is his boyfriend, the character name, and then this is what they're saying. Sister, this is what she's saying. Boyfriend, that's what he's saying. Let's go to Writer Do It for a second and talk about the voiceovers and off-screen. Actually, let's continue on here because that would be considered an extension, what's called an extension. Off-screen and voiceovers are extensions. They're also put in parentheses and is positioned directly off the character's name. Let's show you this. Like right here, we have Ted saying, what do we have here? So let's change this because Ted is obviously in the room here. It mentions him, but let's say somebody named Mary is outside the room yelling. And she's yelling something outside. Now in Writer Duet, you can simply type in a parenthesis like this, and it will bring up a menu here. It'll bring up a drop down and say, what do you want to do? A voiceover, an OS. OC is off camera, so screenwriters usually don't use that. They just use VO or off screen. So if she's off screen outside in the hallway, I'm going to choose off screen, and now you'll notice it's placed directly off the character's name right there. OS, Mary. What do we have here? That means we hear her outside yelling or talking outside the room there. If this is narration, we're going to hit a parentheses and we're going to choose VO, and that is also an extension right there. And that means that she is narrating this, or in some instances you might have it as as her thoughts being read out loud. You hear her voice. The audience actually hears her voice speaking as it's what she's thinking, and so on. All right, another element here would be parentheticals. Parentheticals, or known also as parentheses, this can be an attitude, verbal direction, or action for the director or actor, for the direction of the actor. Must be short and to the point. The general rule is like 1 to 3 words at the most. Only use when necessary. Used for action while speaking. And continued, we're going to get into that later. That's more for a script that's going into production, and the screenwriter is usually not responsible for that. So, but for parentheticals, absolutely. So Ted here, we might want to say Ted says this in like a sarcastic way. So I'm going to hit return. I'm going to tab over. It goes to the parentheses automatically. And like I said, we'll go through the shortcuts on Writer Duet, but we now can type in sarcastically. That's how he delivers this line. He says, oh, what do we have here? So he's being sarcastic when he says that. Here's another example of parentheticals here, once again from the movie Moon. Samwon is talking on the seated in the comms unit, recording a message for his superiors back on Earth. We don't hear what they're saying. We just hear he's talking into the comms unit, but he gets to hear what they're saying, and we don't hear what they're saying. So he says, Sam Bell reporting to Central, 10:14 Pacific time. And then he becomes less formal, so that he got through with the formal stuff, and now he's like, oh, my name is Thompson, how goes it? And then he feigns a laugh, feigning laugh. Oh, really? That's terrible. That's what happens when you don't wear protection, though, huh? And as he finishes there, he kind of gives him a little bit of direction that he goes back to work, and then I've got a full container of helium-3 ready to roll, and so on. So these are properly formatted parentheticals here. If the parentheses are off the side of the name, VO or OS, that is an extension. And if it's down below telling them how to deliver dialogue, or they're doing give them a little bit of direction. Once again, 1 to 3 words at the most. If it's more than that, and it's action like back to work, you need to put that into. You need to go back to the action or direction prompt and put it into the action prompt. That's where that belongs. If it's longer than that needs to go down into action again. Okay, so let's get into transitions here. I'm not going to talk a whole bunch about this because the screenwriters usually don't worry about this. Once again, this is usually the job of the director, is to add editing notes and shooting notes to the script when they mark it up. So transition, like I said, screenwriters usually don't do this unless you have somebody like James Cameron or Greta Gerwig, these directors that write and direct their own movies. They can add these things in there, but screenwriters usually don't add these things in there. And this will be over to the far right hand side of the bottom of your page here. And this is things like cut to, dissolve to, fade out. Never at the end of the script. That was just kind of interesting. I mean, once again, a director can do what they want if they're writing it, but oftentimes screenwriters do not write fade out at the end because that is giving a direction to the editor, which the directors are supposed to do, which the director is supposed to do. So don't use it unless absolutely necessary, unless you're like a director. Anyway, shots. Also, this is basically telling the cinematographer how to shoot the film, and they're going to be like, no, I'll shoot the film how I want to, which is their job. That's what they do. They come up with the shots. So screenwriters usually don't say that. Don't usually say things like angle on, extreme close up, pan to, Frankie's POV, reverse angle. All this terminology is suggesting a certain type of shot. Like if you want like an extreme close up, you say that somebody is crying and they've got tears rolling down, and you're like, ooh, the screenwriter's like, I want to get a close up. I want that to be a close up so they really see these tears coming out of the eyes. Screenwriter, all they would have to say is a tear rolls down so and so's cheek, and then the cinematographer will be like, ooh, how am I going to shoot that? I want an extreme close up of that. But anyway, yeah. So not the job of the screenwriter. That's the job of the cinematographer. They can add the script and mark up the script once it is handed off to them for production. So quick summary: script elements, scene heading, action, character name, dialogue, parenthetical, and extension. Those are the main things that screenwriters are responsible for. So, all right, guys, well, I'm going to continue on with this series. We're going to eventually get into Writer Duet and teach you guys how to technically format a story. We will initially get into some simple 3-act story structure and talk about that. And then we'll get into a little bit more complex story structure later on down the line. So thanks for watching. And if you have any questions or comments, please post them below. And thank you for watching.